Hello everybody, welcome back. We're going to be doing another deck today. Similar to the last one, we're going to be doing one I've already made and adding a card that I just got. This is Corlessa the Scale Singer. It's a green and a blue legendary creature. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast dragon spells from the top of your library. It's a 1/4. So we're going to be adding that into the deck. I'm going to have to be replacing something else, but I'm also going to show you a simple dragon deck with the Dragon as the commander. It's one of the better ones. So, and it's a pretty good one. 4 mana and then 1 of each color. As long as this Dragon is in the command zone, as long as the Dragon is on the command zone or on the battlefield, other dragon spells you cast cost 1 mana less. It has flying, and whenever one or more dragons you control attacks, draw that many cards. Then you put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, and it's a 10/10. So that's a really good dragon card. Takes a while to get out, but hopefully I got enough ramp in there to make it possible. So let's go ahead and start. Show what we got here. We got the Astral Dragon. That's a 6 mana and 2 blues. It's flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you create 2 tokens that are copies of target non-creature permanent, except they're 3/3 dragons in addition, and they have flying as a 4/4. So that's a good, fun little dragon there. Another blue dragon, Ancient Silver Dragon. 6 mana and 2 blues. Flying, whenever Ancient Silver Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. Draw cards equal to the result. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. That's really cool. We got our classics, Swiftfoot Boots, 2 mana, artifact equipment. Equip creature has hexproof and haste with equip cost of 1. That's pretty neat. We've got Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, 2 mana and a white. A legendary creature. Whenever Sisay Captain gets +1/+1 for each color among other legendary permanents you control. And then you can pay 1 of each color to search your library for a legendary permanent card with converted mana cost less than Sisay's power, and put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Got to come up with ways to cheat out the dragons. Cavern of Souls. When it enters, you choose a creature type and add a colorless. Or you can tap to add a mana of any color and spend it only to cast creature spells of the chosen type. That spell can't be countered. Thought Vessel. 2 mana. You have no maximum hand size. Tap for colorless. Wondrous Crucible. 7 mana. It's an artifact, and permanents you control have Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, you mill 2 cards. Then you exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. You copy it, and then you may cast that copy without paying its mana cost. We got Esper Sentinel. It's 1 white. And whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, you draw a card, unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. It's a 1/1. We got a mountain. Brainstorm. 1 blue. Instant, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Doors of Durin. 3 mana, a red and a green. It's a legendary artifact. Whenever you attack, you scry 2. Then you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Until your next turn, it gains trample if you control a dwarf, and hexproof if you control an elf. That part's not as necessary or relevant. Gilded Lotus, 5 mana. Tap it, add 3 mana of 1 color. Good ramp stuff. Prismatic Vista. You pay a life, sacrifice it to search your library for basic land, put it into battlefield, and shuffle. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention you. Tifa will be joining us. She was gaming, but she's taking a break. So Roaming Throne, 4 mana, artifact creature. It has Ward 2, and as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, dragon. It is a dragon as well, and then if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, trigger it additional time. So you get 2. We got Boris Garrison, return a land to get 2 colors. Mountain, Hunting Grounds, a green and a white. It's an enchantment. As long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, Hunting Grounds has, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Crocian Grip, 2 mana and a green. Split Second, meaning as long as this card is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. Basically stops the bug, so you can't do anything else. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Rakdos Carnarium, return it for 2 colors. Swamp. Ancient Tomb, tap to add 2 colorless. It deals 2 damage to you. Take the Bait, 2 colorless, or 2 colors, a red and a white. It's an instant. Cast the spell only during an opponent's turn and only during combat. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn. Untap all attacking creatures and goad them. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. It's a good way to protect yourself. Warp Reality, or Invert Polarity. This is the 40k version of it. 2 blue and a red. Choose target spell, then flip a coin. If you win the flip, gain control of that spell, and you may choose new targets for it. If you lose the flip, counter that spell. So that's a good one to mess around with stuff. We got Shizo's Death's Storehouse. This is a legendary land. You tap it for a black. Or you can pay a black, tap it, and target legendary creature gains fear until end of turn, meaning it can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or black creatures. Ramos Dragon Engine, 6 colorless. This is not a bad commander alternative because it's got all the colors for it and it's cheaper to get out. Legendary artifact creature, flying. Whenever you cast a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each of that spell's colors. So if I cast this spell, it's got a white and a red. I can put 2. Remove 5 +1/+1 counters to add 2 of each color. Only activate once each turn. Master Warcraft, 2 and either 2 red, 2 white, or 1 of each. It's an instant. You cast the spell only before attackers are declared. You choose which creatures attack this turn. You choose which creatures block this turn and how those creatures block. And then the Kami War, it's 1 and then 1 of each. You exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls. You return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then each opponent discards a card. And then finally on the 3rd turn, exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. It is Okagachi Made Manifest. It's an enchantment creature. It is all colors, has flying and trample, and whenever it attacks, defending player chooses a non-land card in your graveyard. Return that card to your hand, and Okagachi gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the mana value of that card, and it's a 6/6. So that's a pretty good dragon. All right, grab some more cards. We've got the Utvara Hellkite, 6 mana and 2 reds. It's flying. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. Plains. Kodama's Reach, 2 mana and a green. Search your library for 2 basic land cards. Reveal them, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand, and shuffle. Mirim, Sentinel Worm. 3 mana, a green, a blue, and a red. This is also a good dragon commander, but it has 2 less colors than if you wanted to have a full set. Flying, board 2. And whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except that token is not legendary if that dragon is legendary. Demonic Tutor, 1 and a black. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Gruul Turf, another return to land for 2 mana. Forest. The World Tree. When the World Tree enters the battlefield tapped, you tap it for green. As long as you control 6 or more lands, lands you control have add 1 mana of any color. This is a good way to help mana fix should you not get the right colors that you need. Sol Ring, 1 mana, tap for 2 colorless. Sarkhan, Unbroken, 2 mana, a green, a blue, and a red. He's a planeswalker. You can +1 him to draw a card, then add a mana of any color. You can -2 him to create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. Or you can -8 him, search your library for any number of dragon creature cards, and put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. It starts out with 4 loyalty. It's a great one for a dragon deck. Dragon Lord Dromoka. This spell cannot be countered. Flying lifelink, and your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. It's a 5/7. Let's scoot that over just a tad. Sorry. Planes. We've got the Armadillo Cloak. 1, a green, and a white. It's an enchantment aura. You enchant the creature, and that enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and trample. And whenever that enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. Savage Ventmaw. It's 4 mana, a red and a green. Flying. Whenever Savage Ventmaw attacks, you add 3 red and 3 green. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Meaning when you transition from combat phase to main phase, the mana sticks around. Normally, it would disappear. And it's a 4/4. We've got the Goldspan Dragon. 3 mana and 2 red. It's flying haste. And whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, you create a treasure token. And treasure tokens you have sacrifice this artifact, add 2 mana of any color rather than 1. Chromatic Lantern, 3 mana. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and it itself taps, add 1 mana of any color. This is another good way to help fix your mana problem. All right, Ghostly Prison. 2 mana and a white. It's an enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 mana for each creature they control that's attacking you. My Anger, 3 mana and a red. It's a creature, haste. As long as Anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. Corporeal Projection, a blue and a red. Target creature you control gains Myriad until end of turn, meaning whenever it attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player and or planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. You can also overload it for 3, 2 blue, and 2 red to make, instead of target creature, all creatures or each creature. And that's a great one for dragons. Here we've got Athreos Shroud Veiled, 4, a white, and a black. It's a legendary enchantment creature. It's indestructible. As long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, it's not a creature. At the beginning of your end step, put a coin counter on another target creature. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. That's the main reason. We don't necessarily need it as a creature, but the enchantment that allows you to bring stuff back is awesome. Farewell, 4 and 2 white. You choose 1 or more options. Exile all artifacts, all creatures, all enchantments, and or all graveyards. Cultivate, similar to Kodama's Reach, 2 and a green, search for 2 lands, reveal it, 1 tapped, 1 in your hand. Sword of the Animist, 2 mana, legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card. Put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Equip cost 2. Urza's Incubator. It's 3 mana artifact. When it enters, you choose a creature type. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. Darksteel Plate, 3 mana. Indestructible, equipped creature has indestructible. Equip cost 2. And Vindicate, 1, a white, and a black. You destroy target permanent. That includes lands. So let's go ahead and make some room here. So far, deck seems to be filling out pretty good. I haven't seen anything yet that I want to remove and switch out for Corlessa. So hopefully there'll be something in this next half of the deck that speaks to me. Old Gnawbone. It's 5 and 2 green. It's flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. It's a 7/7. Rith, Liberated Primeval. 2 mana, a red, a green, and a white. It has flying and ward 2. Other dragons you control have ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature or planeswalker an opponent controlled was dealt excess damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. If you notice, I got a couple of things like Ghostly Prison and the Crucible and others that gives you ward and protection because they're going to want to destroy your dragons and you're going to want to protect them, keep them alive. Tai Gam, Ojutai Master. 2 colorless, or 2 mana, a white and a blue. It's a legendary human monk. Instant, sorcery, and dragon spells you control can't be countered. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, if Tai Gam attack this turn, that spell gains rebound, meaning as the spell, exile the spell as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast that spell from exile without paying its mana cost. It's a 3/4. We have Atarka, World Render, 5, a green, and a red. It's flying trample. And whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gains double strike until end of turn. It's a 6/4. Double strike on dragons is awesome. Command Tower. We have Heroic Intervention, another good protection spell, 1 and a green. It's an instant. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Path of Ancestry enters tapped. Add 1 mana of any color of your commander's color identity, and when that mana is cast on a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. We have Reliquary Tower. No maximum hand size. Tap for colorless. Ponder, 1 blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put them back in any order. You may shuffle. Draw a card. Raugrin Triome. It enters tapped, but it taps for a blue, a red, or a white. Mirari's Wake, 3 mana, a green and a white. Enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. So it's a good way to get it, because these dragons are super expensive. Sword of Vengeance, 3 mana, artifact. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has first strike, vigilance, trample, and haste. 3 mana to equip. We have an island. Authority of the Consuls, 1 white. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. Dryad of the Elysian Grove, 2 mana and a green. Enchantment creature. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other land types. It's a 2/4. Klauth, Unrivaled Ancient, 5 mana, a red and a green. Flying haste. Whenever Klauth, Unrivaled Ancient attacks, you add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the total power of attacking creatures. Spend this mana only to cast spells, meaning you can't use it for an ability of a creature or artifact or enchantment or anything like that. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as phase steps end. Eerie Ultimatum. 2 white, 2 green, and 3 black. Return any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ancient Brass Dragon, 5 mana and 2 black. Whenever Ancient Brass Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. When you do, Put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. Adult Gold Dragon. 3 mana, red and a white. Flying, lifelink, haste. 4/3. Pretty simple, but pretty good. Cavern Horde Dragon. 7 mana and 2 red. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest number of artifacts an opponent controls. Flying, trample, and haste. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls. So it's a 6/6. We have a mountain. Whirlwind of Thought. 1 blue, red, and white. It's an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you draw a card. Titanic Ultimatum. 2 red, 3 green, and 2 white. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain +5/+5, first strike, trample, and lifelink. Smothering Tithe. 3 mana and a white. It's an enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Brave the Sands. 1 and a white. It's an enchantment. Creatures you control have vigilance, and each creature you control can block an additional creature each combat. We have Surok Dragonclaw. 2, a green, a blue, and a red. It has flash, meaning you can cast it at any time. This spell cannot be countered, and creature spells you control can't be countered. Other creatures you control have trample. He's a 6/6. Otawara Soaring City. It's a legendary land. You pay it to add a blue, or you tap it to add a blue, or you can pay 3 and a blue to discard it, and then you return a target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Bojuka Bog. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters, you exile target player's graveyard and tap it to add a black mana. Forest Arcane Signet. 2 mana. You tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Volcanic Island. Tap for a red or a blue. Exotic Orchard. Add a mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. I have a lot of lands here in an order, in a row. Iganjo, Seed of the Empire. It's a legendary land. Tap it for a white, or you can pay 2 and a white to discard it, and it deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Costs 1 less to cast for each legendary creature you control. Rogue's Passage. Tap for a colorless, or you can pay 4 to tap it, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. Solemn Simulacrum, or otherwise known as Sad Robot. Costs 4 mana. When it enters the battlefield, search your library or a basic land card, put that onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and then when it dies, you may draw a card. It's a 2/2. Dragonlord Servant. 1 and a red. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It's a 1/3. Dragon's Disciple. 1 and a white. As it enters, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. If you do, or if you control a dragon, Dragon Disciple enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Dragons you control have ward 1. It's a 1/3. Vesuva. You may have Vesuva enter tapped as a copy of any land on the battlefield. The Great Henge. 7 mana and 2 green. It's a legendary artifact. This costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. You can tap it to add 2 green. You then gain 2 life. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. Ojer Kaslem, Deepest Growth. 3 mana and 2 green. It is a legendary creature, trample. Whenever Ojer enters deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You may put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in any order. When Ojer dies, return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control. It is a 6/5. It becomes a Temple of Cultivation. You tap it to add a green, or you can pay 2 and a green to transform it, and then you activate this only if you control 10 or more permanents and as a sorcery, meaning you need the city's blessing in order to turn it back. Forest, island, wild pear, 4 and 2 greens. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, you may search your library for a creature card with the same total power and toughness and put it onto the battlefield. If you do, shuffle your library. Goblin Anarchomancer, red and a green. Each spell you cast that's red or green costs 1 less to cast. It is a 2/2. This isn't a dragon, but it's a fun one to have in there. Aurelia, the War Leader, 2 mana, 2 red, and 2 white. Flying, Vigilance, and Haste. And whenever Aurelia attacks for the first time each combat, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat. It's a 3/4. And finally, Scion of Draco, 12 mana. The spell costs 2 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control. Flying, each creature you control has Vigilance if it's white, Hexproof if it's blue, Lifelink if it's black, First Strike if it's red, and Trample if it's green. It's a 4/4. Okay, let's see. So Corlessa, you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast dragon spells from the top of your library. That's not a bad way to get around certain things. So we need to find out what we want to swap out. Keeping in the cost reduction stuff is good because dragons are expensive, so we want to keep Dragon Lord. Giving dragons ward is also good, and an additional +1 counter if I reveal a dragon. But maybe that one, because we already have a couple of ward stuff, and they're the same mana cost, same effect. Well, not the same effect, but same mana cost, and almost the same power and toughness. It's not a bad thing to swap it out for. Yeah, because you can only give this a +1/+1 counter if you reveal a dragon when it enters. So that's not really. Yeah. Let's make sure there's nothing else here that jumps out. Yeah, no, that seems like our best option. So let's go ahead and do that. The point of using the mat was supposed to make it easier to grab these things. There we go. Okay. Dragon's Disciple shall leave, and Corlessa, Scale Singer, shall enter. Well, there you go. This is a pretty simple deck. I mean, it's just got some dragons and some protection for those dragons. Big swinging boys, nothing too complicated. A lot of fun, but people are gonna go after you because, you know, dragons are scary. So if you can get that stuff out there quickly enough, kill them swinging big. Nothing too complicated. Just you're swinging big creatures. Do big boy damage. But yeah, I hope that this looks interesting to you, or if you haven't already seen a bunch of dragon decks out there, I know that they're very popular, so I don't think this is going to be anything too spectacular, but thanks for tuning in, and we will go ahead and catch you later.